Most people think Scorpio men admire beauty, mystery, or confidence. Those things can certainly catch their attention. But attention and admiration aren't the same thing. Scorpio men are usually looking beneath the surface. They're less interested in the image someone projects and far more interested in the person behind it. The qualities they admire most are often quieter. Let's explore the three traits Scorpio men quietly admire the most. The first trait Scorpio men quietly admire is a strong sense of self. Not confidence in the loud or performative sense, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are. Scorpio men naturally pay attention to what people don't say. They notice inconsistencies between words, actions, and emotions. Because of that, they're often drawn to people who feel genuine. Someone who doesn't constantly change herself depending on who's in the room, doesn't hide her opinions simply to be liked. Someone who isn't trying to become whoever she thinks other people want. A woman with a strong sense of self doesn't need everyone to agree with her. If she has a different perspective, she's comfortable expressing it. If she has unusual interests or values, she doesn't feel the need to apologize for them. There's a quiet consistency about her. Who she is on the inside is reflected in how she shows up on the outside. That kind of authenticity creates trust. The second trait is being selective, and that's very different from playing hard to get. Sometimes people confuse the two. Playing hard to get is about trying to create interest. Being emotionally unavailable often comes from fear, but being selective comes from knowing what deserves your time and energy. A selective woman isn't trying to make herself seem valuable. She already believes her time has value. She doesn't rush emotional intimacy or hand out trust simply because someone asks for it. She doesn't feel pressured to say yes when something doesn't feel right. Scorpio men tend to respect people who take relationships seriously. They're usually not looking for attention from everyone. They're looking for a connection that actually means something. So when they meet someone who's thoughtful about who she lets into her life, it tells them something important. It says she values depth over validation. And that's a language Scorpio naturally understands. The third trait is a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. Most people naturally avoid difficult conversations. They soften their opinions and ignore problems they don't want to deal with. Or they tell themselves everything is fine because it's easier than confronting reality. Scorpio tends to move in the opposite direction. They'd usually rather know the uncomfortable truth than be comforted by an illusion. That's why they admire people who can be honest with themselves first and with others second. Not brutally honest, not harsh, just real. Someone who's willing to admit when they're wrong, have difficult conversations instead of pretending nothing happened. Someone who's emotionally mature enough to face reality, even when it's uncomfortable. That kind of honesty creates something Scorpio values deeply: trust. Because once they know you're someone who doesn't avoid the truth, they don't feel like they have to constantly read between the lines. They can simply believe what you say. And for Scorpio, that's surprisingly rare. Closing. The interesting thing is, none of these qualities exist to impress Scorpio. Having a strong sense of self, being selective, and valuing truth over comfort aren't strategies. They're simply reflections of someone's character, and maybe that's exactly why Scorpio admires them so much. Because they can't be faked for very long. You either build your life around those qualities or you don't, and Scorpio almost always knows the difference.